BCS EMBRACE Digital Founders Lounge, hosted by BCS EMBRACE and hosted by CK Fadden. Just to give you the premise of what this is about, this is to help entrepreneurs gain progress and succession into their business with these amazing entrepreneurs. So just to give you the rundown of this event, we should have a 35-minute conversation, fireside chat. This will move seamlessly, and then Q&A within the last 20 minutes. There is another event happening in the other room, so please do not enter that room, but we have refreshments as you've seen in the other room. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to CK Fadden. Round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to come to this event today. I truly believe you will live here with something in you, potentially something that can change the course of your life. We've got fantastic speakers today. But and also to those online, I want to also appreciate you for today. Welcome to the Founders Lounge. Founders Lounge is a community of individuals from diverse backgrounds who have growth mindsets. We aim to enable Founders Lounge community aims to enable us in 4 different ways. We have 4 key pillars. One of them is access to network, access to opportunity, capital, opportunity to raise funds, to gain access to money, or things to enable. Education, very similar to this. So you know, and find ways to improve. Also, S, which stands for the socials part, hence the lounge. Because the social is what's going to bring us together on the journey, as well as the other things. It's what breaks down the barriers for us to be able to talk, engage, feel comfortable with one another. Get me started with our first theme ahead. Is it all right if I take a moment just to quickly give a brief talk about BCS EMBRACE and myself? Yeah? Thank you. BCS EMBRACE is a community of IT professionals supporting initiatives to make IT profession more racially diverse and inclusive for all. As introduced by Al, my name is CK Fadden. I'm the current chair of the BCS EMBRACE. I'm also a founder. I founded an organization that transforms the way companies engage with their customers and communicate with their customers and deliver to their customers in a digital world. So, also, before we start, we've got some wonderful speakers who are going to be welcomed onto the panel chair. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you a little story, if that's all right. Yeah? Anyone got an idea what this is? Drumstick?
There's a clue because I've heard it before, but I think it's an arrow.
It's an arrow. It's an arrow. It's an arrow. And there was a metal part to it, which was falling. Oh, rightly so. Some people online may recognize this. I know someone here also recognizes it. It's an arrow. And there's a story to this arrow. This arrow represents something that, before I even get to what the arrow represents, about a month ago, I attended an event. I was invited by a friend of mine And it was last minute, and I said, you know what? The event sounds positive. I'm gonna attend it. It was an event called a Millionaire Mindset. It's based on a training and a book by a gentleman called T. Harv Aker. I always mix those two up. And it was delivered by a chap called Robert Ropel. And at the event, the trainer came on stage and he said, everyone, we're gonna learn how to break an arrow. Before I tell you what we're gonna use to break the arrow, can everybody reach out? If you can do it, can you reach out to where your neck is? And just below your Adam's apple, can you tell me what that feels like?
Hello.
Hello? Yes. Does it feel soft? Soft. And he said, you're gonna break an arrow with that. By a show of hand, if I was to say to someone, can you do that? What's the first thing that's gonna come to your mind?
No.
Huh? No, never. That's it. Exactly my thoughts. Exactly my thoughts on that day. To make it, he also said they shared out a document, and in the document was a disclaimer. Who knows what a disclaimer is? Anyone know what a disclaimer is?
Basically says that you're not responsible for what happens next.
Exactly. So you can imagine, someone's told me, I'm gonna break an arrow with my neck, and here's a disclaimer that they're not gonna be responsible. And some people did leave the room on that day. Because if you didn't sign the disclaimer, they were excluded from the rest of the journey. And my thoughts, I had self-doubting beliefs at that point. I thought, totally impossible. This is impossible. I'm not trained for this. I'm not an expert. Then the trainer had another person who positioned the arrow by his neck. Another person held the other side. And I thought, this is still a joke, isn't it? It must be a joke. He's probably just trying to trigger an emotion in us. Yes, he was triggering that emotion. He went back and forth, back and forth. He would come back to stage. He would ask a question and he would go back. Position. I thought, is he stalling? Is there something, what is this? Then I thought, it's probably a joke. He's not going to do this. Then the atmosphere became intensive. I was like, is he really going to do this? Eventually, he did it. Boom, arrow broke. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow, the first time I saw this in real life, that was my first impression. Wow, what an amazing experience to see somebody actually break an arrow with their neck. The next thing in my thought process was, he's an expert. He's done this many times.
An expert?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I thought, he must be a martial artist or something, and he's gone through years of training doing this. You say these things to yourself, don't you? When you're about to do something you're not comfortable with, or you're doing something and you're about to enter that next stage, and it makes you uncomfortable. You put all sorts of reasons in there. And for me, it was like, I couldn't do this myself. Well, luckily enough, we were put into groups. And you can imagine, many people say teamwork and all these things. And we're put into a group, about maybe 7, 8 of us in the group. And obviously, I was still apprehensive about doing this internally. So, but luckily enough, one of the group members said, I've done this before. Oh my goodness. That was like music to my ears. So it was no longer that guy was extremely special. Yes, he was on stage, he was presenting, he was training us. However, this is somebody just like me who's attended saying, I've done this before. And I thought, okay, have a go. She went ahead, held everything, went forward, and it broke. I breathed in and out, like, okay. I felt a sense of confidence in me. Sense of confidence that, you know what? I can do this as well. I went. They put the arrow right there. Somebody put their hand on the other side. And all you've literally got to do is step forward. No joke. All you literally have to do is make the next step on the journey. I'm going somewhere with this. That's all you have to do. Take that next step in the journey. And that next step broke this. And not only this signified something. It broke a psychological barrier. It broke something in me. It broke a limiting belief. It broke a barrier which I placed on myself. I placed it on myself. Nobody else placed it on me. I placed it on myself. And that, ladies and gentlemen, broke on the day. I wrote some stuff there which are important to me. You understand? Which is what this represents. It broke something on that day. You understand? It broke something on that day. So that's what this represents. I wrote it. Every one of us has something in our journey that we've got to break. We've all got something that limits us, that prevents us from going forward. And you ask, why? Why this story? That's why. Why this event? That's why. That's why we're doing this event. That's why we're here. That's why we've decided to put this forward. To help you break those barriers, to help you connect some dots, to help you make that next step, to bridge those gaps, or to help you with your mind as well. By hearing our speakers talk, you may start to believe in yourself. In fact, you will start to believe in yourselves. You will develop a sense of confidence within yourself. If you've been thinking, you know what? I need to start entrepreneurship. I need to own my company. I need to go on to becoming a board member in my organization. You can do it. Yes, you can. By seeing each of them in their journeys, maybe not today, in future, or even from today, you may know you can do it and gain the confidence, just as I did when I saw the trainer do it, and I saw other people in the same room as me doing it. I actually thought, it can be done. It can be done. So, take action is what we're saying. Take action. Connect with other growth-minded founders and leaders. Yeah? And to wrap up, there's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And I'll pass you over to our events coordination extraordinaire. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, just to go through the speakers, and afterwards I've introduced the speakers. Big round of applause for their time and efforts. To begin with, we have James Dean Sewell. He's an author, speaker, trainer, and personal development coach with a mission and purpose to empower and equip professionals to create positive change and lives in an abundant life. Major fan and lover of personal development because it's a consistent reminder that we all have a power of choice, and to a very large extent, we have the power to decide the outcome of our lives, to which he loves to this day. Let me introduce James. Secondly, we have Dr. Elsa Zedkem. She's a scientist with a PhD in infectious diseases and global health, an entrepreneur and advocate, applying her public speaking, research, and analytical skills, as well as her business actressness, negotiation, and project management skills in life sciences strategy consulting. Along this, she frequently advocates for equality and equity in access to medicine and healthcare and plays a strategic role as a non-executive director for organizations to support executive members reach their organizational goals. May we please introduce Dr. Elsa Zedkem. Last but not least, we have Dr. Olusoji Sanya. He is an experienced economist with a strong commercial acumen and good understanding of policy, financial market instruments and fundamentals. He's a former Goldman Sachs member and is a CFO for Transfer, a UK-based financial technology company with operations across 100 countries. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Covenant University in Nigeria and a master's in international finance from the University of Essex and a doctorate in economics and finance from the University of London. May we please introduce Dr. Olusoji.
Thank you very much all for taking the time to come and share your knowledge, experience, and your journey. There are people here in the audience and online who have given their time to come and hear something. Hopefully, they can take away nuggets or two from and hopefully apply it into their life just by knowing that you've been able to attain those heights which you've reached. So to start us off, the way we would organize this conversation or this panel is each panel member would have a brief talk about what they're gonna talk about, discuss it later. Then we'll move on to the next panel and the next panelist. So each of them will have something to say and present to yourself. Hopefully in that, if you can make notes, make notes. We will actually be sharing the videos as well online, so you can access it. Or if you can make notes, because sometimes there are some thought processes that go in your mind at a certain time. So if you can, do make notes. They will speak about things in relation to their journey. So to start off with, I will introduce James to talk to us about his journey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, as you all know, my name is James Dean Sewell. Lovely to meet you all. Is everyone okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, what I want to do first, now, on the way here, I was thinking, what do I really say to these people? I'm not like Bill Gates, I'm not like Les Brown or any of those things. But what I wanted to do is to share you something. And are you happy for me to share a bit of my story? Is that all right for you? Okay,
Yeah.
So if I want to go back to the age of 1, I understood what abandonment was when a policeman found me under my bed by myself because there was no one else in the home. I understand what it means to be around about 5, 6, 7 years old and to also be in a foster home, but eventually get back to my family. I understand what it means to go through a lot of traumas from sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, pretty much nearly all the abuses you can think of. I understand from an adolescent, I went through all of those, so I know what it means to be a broken person. Are you following? Right, so you will get better, don't worry. But there's a reason why for this. So understand that for me, with my adolescent years, and I thought that was finished, but then I grew to be more of an adult, you know, a young adult. Okay, then now it became more my choices, making bad choices. And one of them is going on a roller coaster, eventually nearly committing suicide. But that was the first time. And then later on, you know, at that point, actually, I found a relationship in religion and so forth, and I thought that would fix everything. And it didn't, because a few years later, I found myself on a tree in the middle of the park, ready to actually hang myself with ties. But there was a voice that said no, and I felt like it was the voice of God saying no behind me, because there was a greater purpose in my whole journey. Is everyone still following me?
Yes.
Okay. So then I eventually got married. thinking, okay, have married, 2 children, you know, the 2 cars, house and all that stuff. Everyone know that. The general dream to do right, because the way I grew, I wanted to make sure that my children didn't go through the same experiences. Are you following me? Yeah. All right. Now, unfortunately, that ended up in a divorce. So my children had to go through something similar to what I went through. Once again, all the ideals that I had in life were eventually shattered and broken. Is everyone still following me?
Yeah.
I know the gentleman looking at me, is the story going to get better?
I'm hoping it will.
Now, let me give you something. A house is built upon what? Foundation, right? So every business has a foundation. What is that foundation?
You,
Huh?
Founder.
What did you say?
you.
Absolutely. So you have a business, but the foundation of the business is the person. I know a lot of people talk about business branding, people talk about personal branding, but the foundation of all things is personal development. This is why I do what I do, because Jeremiah 31 verses 4 says, again, I will build you and thou shalt be rebuilt. I had to be rebuilt from the ground up because I was completely broken. So the reason why I'm an author, speaker, and coach is because I want to empower and uplift and inspire and equip people with the tools they need to overcome any single adversity to not only build their personal development selves, which is the foundation that are building their personal brand and eventually build their business brand. Is this making sense? Okay, all right. So what I do, I've written 4 books. You know, one is Live the Abundant Life. And when I talk about abundance, it really is all about making sure that people live it abundantly, not just financially, but mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, relationally, and socially. You know why? If you listen to my story, all of those were shattered for me growing up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is the reason why it's not just about one avenue, but I want people to have a holistic experience of what abundant living is. My second book that I wrote, The Art of Self-Love, where I talk about the circle of self-love, learning to love you, because guess what? I learned to love everybody else or tried to love everybody else, but never learned to love me because I didn't feel anyone really did. Now my parents love me, family love me, people love me, but not the way I felt that I needed to be loved. Because of all the experiences, this is not someone that is loved through the experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then the third book was The Power of Rejection. In fact, the beauty of rejection, whereas now I'm talking to people about turning the pain and frustration of rejection into power for good so that you become better rather than bitter. And then the last one was the last one that I've done is 7 wonders, well, the wonders of healing. That really goes through the 7 stages. So why am I doing this? I really believe there are a lot of people in this world searching for love. And we're looking all in the wrong place. When really, I know there's relationships with God and so on, you know, which that's 100. I believe in, not everyone believes in that. That's fine, believe what you like. But that spiritual relationship is what helped me to grow and develop, to realize I am somebody. I am worthy and I'm special, and you are someone, and you're worthy and you're special. And I realize that the more I look after me and take care of me, the more I have the capacity to now look after others and take care of them. Does this make sense? So literally, this is who really I am at the core of what I do. So now, even recently, that's where I met Charlie at the Millionaire Mind. I actually spend the best part of £10,000 and I invested in myself so that I can be trained by the world's best trainer, because I want to be the best training person I can be. So for my business to grow to an extent that when I'm training people and helping people, all the information that I have, I can articulate it, I can bring it to you in the best way possible so that you're able to catch it, take it home, and follow the same principles. Does this make sense? And that's literally who I am. So thank you for listening.
Elsa, the floor is yours.
You'll have to stand, or can we just sit down? Okay. So my story is quite, you could say, complementary or almost different to the opposite side of the coin to Joe's very powerful story. And I guess it could term it as the power of nurture. So is that nurture versus nature? I, as opposed to you, grew up in a family home with 2 parents who've been married for 40 years, lived in Cameroon, came here when I was about 14. My dad's a scientist, my mom's a pharmacist. My dad co-developed or co-found one of the HIV strains. So essentially studying science, going to university was the norm. It was the standard. That was expected of me. So of course, there's no doubt that I'm a scientist, right? That's what hat I wear. But I'll add to this, and which is why I emphasize the nurture part. I grew up with a father who absolutely defied the odds of culture, feminism, social upbringing, and everything, especially from being from an African origin. I still remember actually laughing at my parents till this day that there was a day I woke up when I was 7 and I found my African father in the kitchen cooking. And I was like, what are you doing here? Now, for anyone who doesn't understand, within the cultural context, it was very unusual. But I grew up with that is the norm. I grew up with a father who, when I was 21 and I said I was moving from my BSc straight to doing a PhD, I wasn't going to do a master's. All his brothers and a lot of people said, well, why would you do that? Like, no one wants to marry her if she's overly educated. And my dad was like, that's not my problem. Like, my problem in life is to make sure that she's educated and she can stand on her own 2 feet and she's independent. Marriage can be great, but it's not the source of the be all and end all. So no doubt that I grow up to be an advocate. Right? What else was I going to be? Advocate for women in science, women in STEM, and everything that comes in between. And last but not the least, my dad ends up in the UNAIDS, has been in the UNAIDS for 20 odd years. And so dinner conversations around what is diplomacy and what is the role of policy in sort of everything that we do, of course, comes to the forefront, and that is literal dinner conversation. So of course, I deployed to Guinea during the biggest Ebola outbreak in West Africa with the WHO. My mom is going crazy, going, why are you letting our daughter do this at 22 or 23? And my dad's like, that's fine, she'll be fine. Well, I was fine, clearly I'm here. We got attacked at gunpoint and a lot of things happened on the ground. But then with this whole policy mindset, I come back to the UK and I start advocating and looking at what policies led to some of the events happening on ground. And by doing this, I get selected by the European Commission and I become a young leader at the age of 23, and I'm meeting with Ban Ki-moon and all the likes and in Brussels and thinking, okay, we're going to change the world tomorrow. No, you're not. Anyways. And so here I am now. And so the 3 hats I wear is science, entrepreneurship, and policy. Now, the last hat missing is entrepreneurship, right? 9 months into my PhD, I go, okay, I love science. I hate academia. What am I going to do with my life? And so I go through this whole process of trying to figure out what my options were. And I then started my first company, which was called the Northwest Biotech Initiative. We went through a lot of pivots. It's still going today. It's in its 10th year, even though we don't run it anymore. So myself and my co-founder. And then through a lot of different transitions, I've now founded Soco Data, and Soco Data was founded in registered in 2022. I've been doing it for a year. And Soco Data is very much looking at the role of genetics and ethnicity in clinical trials. How does this affect the outcomes of drugs? How does it affect the outcomes of adverse events? And how did this come to be? Well, my PhD focused on looking at this specific aspect of things, but also I went on to work with the UK government during the COVID-19 pandemic on vaccine uptake hesitancy. And then we started looking, of course, at the inclusion in clinical trials and what that looks like. Now, the last piece, which is obviously perhaps not clear, was that entrepreneurship jump was not what my father planned for me. So of course, you'd imagine that came with a lot of conversations and a lot of talks internally as to what are you doing and why are you doing this with your life. And I would say that goes the completely just the power of following your gut. And so hopefully throughout the discussion later on, there'll be 2 things I'll just encourage. 1, nurture versus nature. And 2, follow your gut. You never know where it will lead you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very insightful. I will now pass you over to CJ to talk about his journey as well.
Thank you. I guess probably to thank the last 2 speakers for the, sort of setting a very good tone. And actually I was learning quite a lot from that. The lot of interesting parallels with also. I guess in my case, I'll probably talk very quickly about my background, but I'll talk a bit about my entrepreneurial journey. So I'll probably split the time into 2. Background-wise, I was born in Nigeria. So my mom is a retired academic. Obviously grew up on the university campus. The first university in Nigeria, UI, which I think was named after UCL. actually created by UCL, and then they changed the name later. So apparently the UCL hospital and UCH actually named the same. So I grew up on university campus, literally had my naming ceremony on the campus. So just to emphasize that. And my father, pharmacist by training, but went into entrepreneurship. Started pharmaceutical businesses and then went into financials, so set up insurance brokerages, microfinance bank, which I happen to chair today. So it was very interesting. It wasn't a blend. It was basically installing two parallel systems into one person. So I have a very strong flair for academia, at the same time have a very strong flair for business. So the academic side is very interesting. I always knew since the age of 9 I was going to do a doctorate because it was all around me. You know, so my mom supervised hundreds of PhD students. So that was almost like I owe that, I have to do that. But on the business side, you know, from a very young age, my father allowed me to debate with his stockbrokers. And by then I was, you know, very commercially oriented even before I left secondary school. You know, read all the financial journals that existed. You know, my father would check in and all that. So that set a bit of a backdrop for me. One thing I did amiss though, or I did differently, was everybody else in my family is medical. Some type of medical, physiotherapy, pharmacy, medicine, dentistry. But I decided to go pure economics. And that was very strange. Because you know, it's almost like and of course, in high school, I did the sciences as well. So, I mean, naturally, I was already towing the medical line, but, you know, decided to go pure economics. And, you know, I've only done that since then up until today. So I've only operated in the economics and finance space. So let's stop with the background and let's go into the journey. Like was said, eventually did, you know, follow the parents, because both my parents did doctorate, so it was just a minimum expectation. Did the doctorate, studied the doctorate in Essex, ran off to Goldman for a year, ran to BP to do some oil trading, and then left the industry to start off. So for me, that's where the story really begins. You know, the other bits are things you are kind of mashing through. This is the first time where you come out of the mold and you step into the, you know, you take a plunge. So I always promised myself I would do entrepreneurship. And I found myself in the oil industry thinking, if you keep going, you're never going to leave. So basically in 2016, late 2016, I resigned, and everybody's thinking, you are crazy. You know, you resign to what as well. I'll figure it out. So I resigned from the oil industry. Had a group of other guys who also wanted to try out what was on the other side. And we left. We decided, you know, what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something in financial technology. So again, not commodities or oil like we were in before. We want to do something different. And we approached the regulator in London and said, hey, we want a license for money remittance. I'm like, well, you guys don't have any experience in money remittance. So our first license was basically declined. And then we appealed and said, actually, yes, we're from the oil industry, but we're working on the financial side of oil. So actually, we do know what we're talking about. So we got an appeal. We actually did get an FCA license June 2017, launched the product, you know, used our savings to start. And yeah, so we did the first phase with our own money before, you know, other people sort of saw a bit of traction and got interested. And obviously the backdrop, you know, many people thought, well, maybe after 9 months, your youthful exuberance will, you know, wear out. And then, so I had people saying to me, when would you go back to the industry? We're still waiting for you. And interestingly, I was getting job offers for the first 2 years from the oil industry. I think they kind of stopped in 2020. So, you know, there was always the option to walk back. But there's something empowering about building a product that people use, that transforms lives, that helps people. So obviously in the first, you know, in the first few months or years, it's not really, the KPI is not the profitability, it's the impact. And, you know, I think that was what really kept us resolute, saying that, look, we're going to continue in this direction because we're touching people's lives and people are actually, you know, getting better for it. For us, what we were offering was, you know, in the space we were delivering impact into, we started in a sort of small pilot corridor, the Nigerian diaspora, sort of UK to Nigeria payments. And the problem in that sector was you had to make a choice. So you either had to go for value or go for safety. And we thought that doesn't make sense. So if you wanted to go for value, you use an unregulated my guy. And he gave you the best value, but he's not regulated, he's not licensed, and God help you, your money arrives. Or you go for the established brands, I'm not going to mention names. They give you obviously a strong brand, they're regulated, reliable. You're not going to stay up at night thinking, will my money arrive? But of course, the value is like you're trading that safety for value. So we thought, actually, why don't we build a platform that gives the best of both? We have a regulated platform, served digitally, user-friendly, gives both the value and the safety. That was the birth of transfer. So I'll stop there, and I'm sure we'll speak a bit more about it later. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that, CJ. We're ready for some questions. Yeah, fantastic. So you've had an insight into each individual member of our panel's journey so far. You may understand why they're doing what they're doing. We'll aim to dig just a little bit deeper into some of the entrepreneurial skills, the challenges, and so on and so forth. First question which we have is, what inspired you to venture into the entrepreneurship space? What were the initial challenges you faced? And I think some of you may have covered that. What we're looking for is maybe a chance to elaborate more so that people can touch and understand the real challenge and what you were able to do to overcome that challenge. And I'm guessing there'll be many moments in that journey where you faced one challenge and what you did or what you were able to do to overcome it. Who would like to start? Let's start with you, CJ.
Okay, so I'll summarize. When we started transfer, we had three broad challenges.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that we were doing something people thought was completely there was the regulatory part, which I sort of touched on briefly. There's that sort of acceptance and credibility. We're new. How do people know us, trust us? How do they think we're real? So there's that issue of how do you convince the world? That, and of course, with every startup, funding. How do you fund this?
Yeah. That might be an interesting one to delve into because that's many, and I talk to many founders, many entrepreneurs. I have many associates who also support with funding. So that'll be an interesting one to delve into as well. How you were able to, what was the, if you can, I'm not sure if you can quantify, but what was the main challenges you faced and how were you able to overcome it? And you feel free to delve into the mindset as well, what you were going through from an emotional and other stuff like that.
Okay, so that's interesting. So I'll take the first two and then I'll probably spend more of the time on. So obviously the regulatory bit, as I mentioned, we had to speak to the FDA, we did an application, and we thought, sorry, no. And then obviously we went back to sort of say, we actually know what we're doing. And within a month we got, it all turned out. Of course, in the UK, if you do the kind of business we do, you have two regulators, the FCA and then the anti-money laundering side of HMRC. And both are not easiest to please. But we managed to sort of turn that around with clarification and stuff like that. Second bit is the credibility bit. And so what we did there was to understand the community we were sort of dealing with, and also understand, parts of the things the communities do around trust. So what we did was we looked at there's one very massive religious organization that have sort of very big events, and we know that historically used to get about 60 to 100,000 attendees. And we happened to have a pre-event. So we started just doing some very small level of pre-events, and it was a sort of slow build up. between sort of April and October. So basically, before we rolled out our first product, we had started advertising at the pre-event. That sort of went through up until October, and then obviously we basically did every possible marketing channel, but it's a very small dose. It's almost like a test. So we went from TV to leafleting, the digital marketing to event sponsorship and all that. And the idea was to see what works. And in that instance, in that situation, in that, it was the event sponsorship that delivered the most impact. Some of the other channels which we thought will turn around quickly, didn't at the time. So for example, digital marketing didn't work at that time. And was that contrary to sort of on that common sense at the time. So that was quite interesting. And yes, slowly we got accepted, by the community, and obviously the proof is in the usage, right? So that was good. With funding, that's the most interesting bit. When we started, obviously, we went with our savings. We thought, okay, we're taking a risk here, so we're not going to expose anybody else. Let's use our funds to set it up and show some traction before we bring anybody else to the party. So that was the thinking, number one. So in terms of the whole period where we're building the platform and all that, we didn't go looking for any funding. But we have to we have a point to prove. So let's not get people involved in the experiment. Now, once we were up and running for 2 months, then I thought, okay, actually, let's talk to a few guys, friends and family, a few other people there and said, look, here's what we're doing. Here's, we have a license, we have the website, we're launching on the production. Okay, let's see how it goes. So around July, August, so sort of 2 months in, we said, look, we've processed about 11 million pounds worth of payments. And so obviously people want to listen. So at that point, look, these are the challenges we're having, and we started to have conversations. See, a few people, jumped on it. A few people said, well, watch a bit more. But I think in October, when we went for this, event I was talking about, sponsored, and with a lot of traction, a lot of the investors who were on few minds the first time, really came running through the door. After that event with the publicity, they were like, actually, let's pick up that conversation. And so the sort of first friends and family round, really came through after that. It was quite obvious to the community and to everyone saying, okay, well, this might have some legs in the end. So that was kind of how we, broke through the first funding barrier. I was thinking about the other stories about it, but I guess we'll get to that.
So you bootstrap to using your own funds to start with, then you use friends and family later on.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Take one from you on that same topic, which is what inspired you to venture into entrepreneurship, part of space, and what were your initial challenges faced, Dr. Elsa?
Sure. What inspired me? I think I touched on it already, which was but all the initial challenge, I'll probably say there are 2 challenges, right? So I'm in a biotech or tech bio or life sciences space, however you want to call it. Let's call a spade a spade. It's 90% or predominantly a Caucasian space, predominantly male heavy, and a lot of that comes with it. Luckily enough, I have the father that I have, so I don't really care. But you can see that you could get different reactions from different people. So one of the first things I would say was when I started Circle Data, I was a solo founder, which one could argue has nothing to do perhaps with your gender, ethnicity, etc. It's just higher risk, but also it's a compounding factor. But the no sort of resolve to that was just I will stand 10 toes down with what we're doing, and you're either going to believe that I have the track record to do it and make sure that I have different things in place to mitigate that. So I have a CTO, and as of now, she's now co-founder, but 2 years ago when I started, that did not exist, right? And I will say secondly, differently to you, perhaps, Ajay, I did start off with some of my own cash, some of bootstrapping, but it is tech bio, so it is quite capital intensive. So I did go out. I was able to get support from the Francis and Crick Institute, from the KK Labs Accelerator, who put some money in to the company. able to apply for Innovate UK grants, that was able to put the money into the company as well. And that has kept us going until now. We're now raising our next round. So I think it's just remembering the context within which you live in and just using the cards life as still.
Amazing, amazing. Slightly two different journeys in terms of how you go about raising funds. But that's why we're here, ladies and gentlemen. There is no right answer to this. It's just the path, or as you mentioned, the card you're dealt with, you make use of what you've given. Sometimes you want to use your own funds, or friends and family, and sometimes that may not be possible. So you've got to think, what other ways can I do it? Do I bootstrap it? Do I go to friends and family? Do I go external? Well, in terms of going external, or going to through some funding round, was one of the challenges, or one of the thought process a funder goes is the dilution or the giving away of equity. How did you deal with that? How did you make that decision? Is there something you can share with the listeners?
So I would say similarly, my question last year was, does it have legs? Right? And there were two criteria that I put to myself to test out if it has legs. My family and friends might say, yes, my business is great, but they're my family and friends. So, so the first thing I said was, okay, what is the one person or one institution that could back me, that would provide me and other people with the backing and the confidence that it has legs? The Francis and Crick Institute, for anyone who does not know, is literally one of the hugest, biggest institutions, scientific based within, really within Europe, obviously within London, within the context we're set in. They have an accelerator called the KQ Labs Accelerator, is a knowledge quarter accelerator. Is the only one in Europe that does data-driven health. And because what we're doing is data-driven and we need that intersection of pharma, I know nothing about legal. So there's a lot of things that I knew nothing about, legal, regulatory. So it was, who would give me the stamp of approval in quotation marks that I need? So it was completely not ego driven. And I think sometimes we can get into this tug of war of ego versus what it is. So I was like, this is the proposition, let's see. We were literally idea stage, went, and I remember when I submitted the application for KQ Labs, and I was like, let's see if we get it. Literally just throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And got a call back to come back and pitched it, and then we got on, and I was like, okay. And then I said, okay, well, Innovate UK is Innovate UK. I think similarly, again, it goes through a whole process of assessors, between 3 to 5 assessors. They rank it, it's highly competitive. Again, if the UK government would give me their money to back this idea, then I think it has legs. And then again, there I used my own savings to get a grant writer to write the application. And then we were successful. Well, actually, the first one we were not successful, gave us feedback, and then we were successful. And then I was like, okay, then I think it's time to go. I think there's enough legs there. So I think the conversation around equity, and just to touch on that, is one, are you wanting that raise because it's literally what you need to survive, whether that's for 12 months or 24 months? Is it something that is a necessity? Is it something that you just would like? Because you know, there's all of this whole splash, like when everyone raises LinkedIn splash and everything, like, I could care less about that. But anyways, it's like, what is the real factor here? Is the real factor here the value and the requirement of the business? Or is it just you tripping a little bit? But then also is remembering that 100% of 0 is 0, right? So what is it? What are you willing to give? And what are your key milestones? So set those key milestones, set those criteria that you need, and then you stand 10 toes down.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I believe somebody's getting something from there, whether it's the institution to approach for the funding or having somebody to support you, because not everyone might be excellent or great at making that proposal or writing and grants or applying for the grant. So always work out the value exchange, I would say, in what you're doing. So that's amazing. Thank you very much for that information. We've got more questions and I'm looking at the time. So we're gonna move to the next question just because we're mindful of time. James, could you share a pivotal moment in your journey as a founder where you had to make tough decisions that significantly impacted your business?
Where do I begin? So what I didn't mention was I've probably done about 10 plus businesses in my life. And a lot of them failed, a lot of them stopped. You see, here's the thing, and I love the journey. Some people start one, some people start many. You know, if you look at someone like Abraham Lincoln, if you can look at the list of things he failed at, but he became one of the greatest things ever. So for me, the significant event was basically last year. I basically put the best part of £20,000 into a business. I believe in that if there's no opportunities for you, you create one. You know, I'm not one to wait for no one. Like, I can't be bothered for that. So I'll just create one. So I was creating a company called Queendom. It was about empowering women through music, having more positive music. And we were basically putting an event. I remember basically putting thousands to it, like with high flyer artists and so forth. And, you know, eventually came to the point, and as I was speaking to Dr. Elsa, is that because of my spiritual journey, there wasn't really much of a piece I had with it. Music's always been my passion. But sometimes in life, we feel that your passion and purpose are the same, but they're not. Usually passion is driven by the nurture side of what's happened in your life. Using nature, nurture what you use, right? But in terms of nature, that's the purpose, right? So in my journey is that I had to now decide where to continue this thing, which probably wouldn't have gone as far as I wanted to go, or to let it go with my money that I'm invested in it, and to eventually do what I'm doing now. So that's basically really what I chose to do, is leave one business, lose what's lost with it, and then to actually set up a whole new one. And what happened was, once I'd done that, at work, where I work in the daytime, I got promoted and basically my money back within a year anyway. On top of that, in the same month of July, I ended up starting writing not one, but 2 books. So, and now I've written 4, and it's not even a year yet. I'm on my 5th one. So the interesting thing is that I chose to leave what I know. I used to hold on to music. I've loved music. I'll still do it anyway. But I decided, you know what, let me go for the purpose that I was created for. I believe we all have a gift. My gift is speaking. Music, I was a music producer, so I wasn't using my speaking. But, you know, I always love music. You really get lost into it. But I believe because of the pains and traumas and so forth I went through, that was my escape to really have passion into it. Does that make sense? I had a friend who was a runner, basically to be an Olympic runner. From school, he would like long distance running, very brilliant. But because his father died, and I believe it was in the fire, he eventually became a fireman rather than doing his running. So that was a passion rather than the purpose. Does this make sense? So that's what I did last year, and it's one of the best decisions I made. And now that I'm actually in my gift, the good book talks about how, a man's gift or a woman's gift makes room for them and brings them before great men. So as I use my gift, doors are opening up for me. Now I'm actually when I spoke to Charlie, one of the things is I'm a leader at work. So I'm also the global Black network leader, chairman, co-chairman. So I now look after all the Black network community within the business I've stepped on. So, I've been doing these things for years, but in terms of my own business, the crucial thing is, am I going to stay because I've invested money? Am I going to stay because, wow, I've invested time, invested energy, invested money, this is what I want to do? Or am I going to choose to let go of something that's no longer serving me to now serve a higher purpose, which will serve people? And then overall, that's what I've done. And this is where I am today. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's a profound thought process. And what you may or may not have gathered from that is that business is there to serve you. It's there to serve you. Always remember that. If you start a business, you're in some form of business venture, your business is there to serve you. And if it's not serving you, then you've got to go through that thought process. So this is somebody saying, you know what? That business was no longer serving me. And because it's no longer serving me, I'm not going to commit my time onto you anymore. So I'm not sure who's listening to this or whose this message has gone to, but that's something you might have to think about. Sometimes it's not always the success we discuss. Sometimes it's knowing when to say, you know what, enough is enough with this, because The more you spend on that, who knows? Who knows? Or is the opportunity a step, the next step away? And only you can make that decision. Am I reaching to somebody right now?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Dr. Osa or CG, would you like to input, would either of you like to input on that particular question, which is sharing a pivotal moment in the journey where you had a tough decision and which significantly impacted the business? We've had one view, one thought process. And as I said, sometimes there is never a right answer because each person's journey is different. You understand? Is there something you want to share or you want to share along those lines, maybe to give an alternative view perspective?
I'll share something. So, in the early days.
Yeah.
So my co-founder went to UCL and they have some, sort of incubator style program. So they recommended us to a program called the Green Light Program.
Okay.
We attended, it was great. And obviously they put us in this sort of mindset of institutional funding. And after about 7 weeks, I can't remember how long it was actually somewhere around here. Brought in a few funds to talk to us. And we got offered funding, but we rejected it. Of course, the reason why I'm telling the story is more around the thinking, the decision. So they ran us through a process. And the question is, we got offered at the time, this was 2017, just a year in, probably between £500,000 to £1 million pounds. And we thought, actually, no, there's a lot more that we can do with our fund. Obviously, I come from a fundamentals background.
Okay.
And so whilst in that period, there was a lot of funding for startups. But the fundamental in me was the whole business should be able to, deliver some commercials and not just only burn, except obviously there's a greater purpose. And we saw that there was a trend and culture at the time where businesses just took big checks and just. So we said, we need to actually validate that this is working. So let's be a bit more innovative. Let's take some time. They couldn't believe it. Obviously, we walked away from funding. And obviously, thinking at the time is could be a really, really, long term looking back, could be a really horrible decision. Or, it could help. But actually, from that point, with that mindset, we became very innovative with fundraising. We focus more on actually generating basically getting the business funding growth.
Yeah.
And we did that up until we're cash flow positive in 2020.
Okay.
And actually continue to do that, up until sort of, this year where we started to do more strategic funding, like obviously listing a bond in Frankfurt or getting ready for a listing on the stock exchange. But we basically were able to acquire infrastructure that our peers, like companies around, in the industry around the same level, who had raised up to sort of $90–100 million. But actually, when we have conversations with investors, we tell them we've not raised up to $500,000 institutional funding. Like, but how did you do all this? But that decision at that time, we could have been make or break.
Yes.
Actually helped change our perspective and mindsets. And so we went down this sort of innovate our way out of problems. And so I remember there was a VC in 2018 who wanted to sign a £5 million check. And he was like, yeah, so, when the fund comes in, you do. And I told him, sir, we don't throw cash at problems. We innovate around them. That was not what you would normally get from a business. But that has kind of helped us a lot. And speaking of dilution, it meant if we're able to innovate through, a lot of those challenges, we didn't have to, give up a lot of obviously that's going to happen in the end because we tested that and all that.
So that's another. Are there any questions from online? Anyone online? No questions online? Fantastic. I'm mindful this is 7:30. We'll wrap you up now. We want to thank our panelists for being vulnerable, for being able to share their journey with us and their experience. I believe the message will help somebody It may not be immediate, it may be further down the line, and it may be somebody right now. Thank you very much to yourself. Give yourself a clap of. I'm wearing this hat, and it's to embrace culture. If you're going to embrace diversity, you're going to embrace culture. And every time we do this event, I'm going to wear a different hat from a different cultural location. So if you want to suggest hats to me, by all means, please send an email to us if you go to BCS EMBRACE, type that into one of the search engines, you will be able to find our email address there. You suggest hats, and by all means, we will definitely seriously consider it. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Thanks a lot.